Hello, Phalonians. I'm Lore Master Matt,
And I'm Phelan John.
and welcome to the Bellringers. From time to time, we're going to record a series on a special topic, and you'll find that in these sessions, the Bellringers. The Lord Mayor of Teradim, Varain Qualtara, employs many young people, generally waifs and strays like John and I, to roam throughout Teradim, ringing a bell and shouting proclamations from the Lord Mayor or the news of the day. Besides a daily stipend, bellringers are often stopped on the streets by the affluent of Teradim and asked to give the news to them personally, for which they receive a copper or two for their time. We are your bellringers, and today the news is a starting point for lore and your journey through the world of Phalon.
Well, welcome back, everybody. In our last segment, we started talking about Falkaar. We talked about its history, and we talked about its government and its organization. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the religion of Falkaar and a little bit about its military. So, John, why don't we start with the religion of Falkaar? What is its religion, and how is it different from other religions on the Northern Continent?
Okay, so once again, the Falkarans were originally like the Herodellans and Thormanolans, or most of the Thormanolans. They were originally Urdagar. The Urdagar people's interpretation of the Gaul is totemic, meaning they took a male and female aspect of each of the Gaul and related them to animal totems. Okay, so you have, the serpent tribe, the wolf tribe, the lion tribe. And that's also basically their religion. They worship those totems, those avatars of their tribe. And so there is a move during the time period that after the kingdom of Falkaar has kind of stood up, in looking at civilizing and kind of keeping things, better organized and less chaotic. The Falkarans took a different sort of tack, and those were movements across. So, many of the peoples moving south, especially out of Urdagar lands, and contacting the Kryjan and then Trazarite cultures to put a human face to their religion, their contact with the aspects of the Creator. And so the Phalar people, and there's a much longer story here because the Varanic religion, is a broader thing than just the Falkaran expression. So we're going to dive into the Falkaran expression. We probably ought to do, one of these on the whole timeline of that, Matt.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a Varanic religion. The bottom line is the Varanic religion. That what becomes the Phalar, the urban Phalar religion, is a pantheon of gods, which are male and female, human, anthropomorphic aspects of the Creator, not animal aspects of the Creator. So instead of the lion, we have Vidnar, a knightly representation of, that God, that divine being. Ilea instead of the eagle, Sylvia instead of the raven. And so there really is kind of a translation there. And they didn't translate them all in every culture. The Herodellans only translate 12. They leave the aspects of the Kehinan, the three rebel Gaul, out. And the Falkarans choose a different path. And where the Herodellan expression of Moranic religion focuses on their spirit nature and does keep a much stronger tie to their Urdagar background, the Falkaran expression is actually tied to the 9 energies. And so what's important about Vidnar to a Falkaran is, their place as, the Lord of Flame, the Lord of Fire, right? As opposed to the lion, which is how a Herodellan would see him. Same God, different versions. And so there are worshipers in Falkaar of the Kehinan, the rebels that kind of take those energies and don't assign an evil or a good nature to any of these things, and just they are what they are. And that story has not been fully told yet. We're going to enjoy, Matt and I are going to enjoy bringing that all to you.
We've been talking about that for a while.
But where it manifests, the one place you can start, you can see it now, is their knighthood lines up on these energies. So in Herodel, we'd have a knight of Vidnar, a knight of Sylvia, a knight of Ilea, a knight of Beric. You have Knights Mariner and Knights Immolator, Knights Defender in Falkaar. And that's where those terms come from. And they're tied to the energies, the elements. And so a Knight Defender is basically an Earth Knight. That's the theme. Knight Defender, common model, everybody knows him. He's in that Falkaran starter box. Salty dude that kind of forms the center of a Falkaran battle line often. They're also the royal bodyguards. So if you're in the capital of Falkaar, Barmar, the Knights Defender, the most likely place that you'll find them is around the king or queen and their family. Whereas Knights Mariner lead boarding parties and defend ships and ports. Parakir, for example, are air knights. Kind of makes sense, right? Their technical term is Knights Ascender, but Parakir is a Faelish term. Parak is the animal. Kirin is the plural of knights. So Parakirin is Parak Knights. Pretty simple, So that's where you see it now. But as far as the priests, we haven't really put a Falkaran equivalent to the Cantor or the Fist of Vidnar into play. The Shadow Hunter is something different. So a priest of one of these gods is not something we put on the table for Falkarans, and we're looking forward to both doing that and bringing the rest of the knights out that we don't already have. So those temples are still out there. There's temples to Ilea and Vidnar and Beric and all those folks, just like you'd expect. But the priests work a little differently than they do in their sister kingdom.
Interesting. So we ventured a little bit into the military there because it's so tied to the religion. But how does Falkaar organize its military? We get some view of it as we look at the models for Free Blades, and we see the starter box, and we see like sheriff's levies, and we see pikemen, and we see that Knight Defender that you talked about. So talk to me a little bit about the organization.
Yeah, those guys. So Falkaar is divided into 3 duchies. The Royal Duchy is centered on Barmar, the capital. They're centered on the 3 big cities, the 3 walled cities of Falkaar. The Royal Duchy is, and the Crown Prince serves as the day-to-day duke. That's really a title held by the king or queen, but the Crown Prince or Princess is the person executing the duties day-to-day of the Duke of Barmar. The Duchy of Warmouth, that's the coastal city of Falkaar on the southwest coast, and the Duchy of Turena, which is the city on the western coast of the Inner Sea, and the city that used to be Baharadad, the Prazerite city that the original king of Falkaar was spent some time in when he was taken prisoner. So there's 3 duchies, and then those duchies have baronies inside them, where they have vassals that are out there doing things on behalf of the dukes, the barons. And so the military has got the core military's got 4 components to it. First, the king's got his own or her own guard of knights. Makes sense, right? Every baron has their own specialty troops. Okay, so the Baron of Caradal has light cavalry, and the reason why is because the Baron of Caradal defends the northeastern border, which is wide open to Erdogar and Herodel predation. Then the dukes have got their own militia, and so Baylor's swordsmen and pikemen are ducal troops. from the three big cities, and they would form the core of any army that was put in the field. Okay. So, if you had a Falkaran army, whatever baron or barons would be there would have their specialty troops. Caradel would be like cavalry. Falkaar would be marines. Jendel would be swordsmen, as you know from the Jendel Bladeseeker. Kolakar wielding heavy infantry. And Klar would actually produce two. The Archbaron would produce two. Parakir, which we don't love. And they also, their core baronial troops are kept the Trazarite tradition. And so they have Sakadans and shields. And we haven't seen that guy yet. Or girl.
No, that's cool.
Not something we did in a way, because there was a conversation on Discord. And I'm not going to go into the whole deal. You can find it there. It's about, who are Colin and I in the world. It starts silly, stays silly. But Colin's got a great avatar for the world. It's a model will probably be called the Void Dancer. Represents a character he played in Brightsword. But mine would be the protagonist of the Brightsword War book that we're going to have in a few years, 2008. And he is a Klar first son who rejects taking over the Archbarony from his dad and goes off and do his own thing. And he does it on the inner sea. So he's partially trained as a Parakir and goes off and becomes a sailor. So he's like half Knight Mariner and half Parakir scout,
Nice.
Yeah. And so, and we're talking about what model we're going to convert. It gets crazy, but so there are Sakazits in the Falkaran military in the hands of the baronial troops of the Archbarony Klar. So you got the King's Guard, you've got the Dukes got their core elements, big blocks of pikemen and Failor swordsmen kind of running around the gaps, and then and that's the big part of the army in the field. And then there's sheriffs. There's smaller nobles, not with core stones, not with big castles, dotted across Falkaar, and they raise a levy of archers. And that's where the sheriff's levy comes from.
Ah, okay.
Now, there's a couple other things in there, one of which is the foresters patrol the two big forests, as you would imagine, in Falkaar. And those are often entry points for demons coming over from Caroline, especially dark-robed demons. And so, but in the wartime, they would serve the king directly if he needed them to do something besides keep demons under control. So, but they're not specifically part of the army. And then the Navy's got three pieces. There's a barony on the western coast that has a fleet of warships that protects the coast from pirates. The balance of the ships come from the Duke of Lormouth, which is the big coastal city. That's where the Falkaar Navy is centered. And there's a small fleet also on the inner sea that the Duke of Tirana maintains, but much, much smaller in scale because there's not much. A little bit of pirate hunting. Not going to be a big sea war between Haradel and Falkaar, but sometimes, red sail gets raised,
Right.
and, things go on. And then, of course, the knights we talked about, but they are all these specialty troops or sworn directly to the king or queen, like in the case of today.
Awesome. All right, folks, thanks for joining us for this episode. Next time, we're going to venture out and we're going to do another faction, and we hope to see you there. Until next time, we'll see you around the table.
Sil Sakava.